I made a vow I would dedicate my life to warn the world about the danger of nuclear weapons. I was a grade 8 student in junior high school. I was 13. I was not at school, I was at the Army headquarters because in those days, Japan was losing fast in the war and they used every able-bodied people to assess the efforts of the Army and civic governments and so on. So instead of studying in the classroom, I was sent to the Army headquarters to learn how to use the decoding machine. Can you imagine? 13-year-old girl was learning to deal with a top secret. And I learned how to write the messages and how to translate messages. At 8:15, I was at the Army headquarters, which was 1 mile, 1.8 kilometers away from the ground zero. At 8 o'clock, we started the morning assembly, and the man in charge of us, Major Yanai, was giving us a pep talk. You girls got a good training, and this is the very day you start proving your patriotism and loyalty to the emperor. We said, yes, sir, we'll do our very best. And at that second, I saw the bluish-white flash all over the windows. Next thing I sensed was just flying up in the air. I was just floating up in the air. The powerful blast flattened all the buildings in the city, and obviously my own building was falling down. My body was in it. When I regained the consciousness in the total darkness and silence, I knew what happened. I tried to move my body, but I couldn't, so I knew I was faced with death. Finally, Americans got us. Then all of a sudden, somebody grabbed my left shoulder from behind. Strong male voice said in the total darkness, "Don't give up. I'm trying to free you. Keep moving, keep pushing." And you see the sunray coming through that opening and crawl toward it as quickly as possible. I looked back and saw the entire rubble was on fire. That meant about 30 other girls who were with me were simply burned alive. It happened in the morning at 8:15, but when I came out, it was so dark. Morning turned to be evening. Everybody, they were almost naked, clothes were tattered, hair was standing up, and the skin and flesh were burned, blackened, and swollen, and the parts of the bodies were missing, and some were carrying their own eyeballs, and they collapsed as they walked. As they collapsed, their stomach burst open, intestines stretched out. This was kind of gross situation I witnessed. And we learned how to step over the dead bodies, and we managed to escape to the hillside. It's strange. You would think the place people would be screaming, yelling for help. It was so quiet, almost soundless. Nobody had that kind of physical and psychological strength to yell, "Hey, I'm in trouble, give me and help me." Everybody was begging for water. "Water, please. Water, please." I looked around and see if there were medical doctors and nurses. None. Of course, they too were injured and killed. Tens of thousands of people are dying. Not one single doctor. No medication, no food. That's how they simply melted, carbonized. That's what I saw that day. That night we sat on the hill and watched All night, the city burned. The huge ball of fire just kept burning and burning. The heat on the ground, you see, way up there, it was over 1,000,000 degrees, but by the time the heat arrived at the ground level where human beings were working, 4,000 degrees Celsius. That heat just burned any human beings. So over 8,000 classmates, schoolmates in grade 7 and grade 8 in Hiroshima, they simply were vaporized. My father and I went back to where our house had stood. We wanted to see what happened. Of course, we found nothing but ashes and rubbles. I wanted to see what I can find. I touched the soil, the ground, and I found the burnt metal ornamental clock. I remembered it, and that was the only object which connected me with the past. And I brought it with me to Canada. Then I thought, well, why don't I share it with the Canadians? And I thought of War Museum in Ottawa. That would be the right place. So, part of me is still there.
The United States is ready, willing, and able.
The world has become steadily dangerous place in the past 72 years since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because nuclear weapon development has been constant, and the world hasn't really done a significant job to stop that process. When Donald Trump came to White House, I think the situation became so much more dangerous. It's frightening. Almost daily exchange of insults and ridicule to each other. Well, initially, I thought, gosh, he must be joking. He couldn't mean that. But now we have to believe he means what he says. Canada has not been working with the rest of the world for the prohibition, elimination of nuclear weapons. Canada has done some good things, starting with Mr. Pearson. Pierre Trudeau, he was quite articulate. I heard him at the UN, 1978. He made a very powerful speech. I admired that Trudeau's spirit. But his son doesn't seem to have any interest. I wonder if he thought about his own children, who could be melting, incinerated, carbonized. Has he thought about that way? He has a responsibility to protect people, humanity. But he seemed to be hiding behind Mr. Trump. I think even if you're a member of the NATO, Canada can voice its opinion. And unless people smarten up and take action, the similar thing could happen again. And in my view, that should never happen again. That was totally inhumane act.